What's up? And welcome back to the Renaissance Room podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about Martin Luther King Day. I kind of want to share some thoughts in regards to this. But first off, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are feeling amazing and living life. You know, we've been talking about the miseducation, and that's kind of been like a little mini series that I'm kind of like starting. And I think that's like pretty much this entire podcast, to be quite honest. It's about re-educating and unlearning and teaching you guys new things that I'm learning along the way. But one of the things I want to say is like, you know, racism, it has this thing, it's such an evil, nasty thing. And it really does suck because it really kind of puts us in spaces where we don't really have community, you know, with like one another. And there's just this huge divide, and it just seems like it's never ending. And, you know, the good that people, white people do is oftentimes overshadowed by so much of the many of them who don't do good things. You know what I mean? Like, it's really unfortunate, and it takes away from just like, I don't know, I think the overall humanity and just like the experience, you know? So anyways, Martin Luther King. I think, first of all, the monument that's in Boston, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think my thoughts in regards to what I feel like and what it looks like and just the entire overall presentation of the sculpture is just like, yeah. But one thing I will say is that I really do feel as though when it comes to Martin Luther King, everything that like the globalization and just like the perpetual celebration of Martin Luther King's like walk and everything that he was, you know, advocating for supposedly. I think that it really, first of all, it overshadows the work that we're still doing today. Martin Luther King did not change anything. He did not shape anything. He did not change anything. And to be honest, when we really look at his whole thing, what was it about? It was about integration. White people wanted segregation. And what happened was, it was kind of like Martin Luther King had this fake dream of, you know, us kind of coming together, but we never came together. What happened was we came in agreements with white people. And like I said, we talk about the false sense of allegiance a lot of times in regards to white spaces and black people and their talents and their gifts, right? Look at Kim Kardashian. We can use this as a cultural example. White people will always continuously take from black people and profit off of our ideas and things and so forth. So, you know, to me, I just think that even with him speaking that and just doing that, I think we just have to realize that, like, to be a leader, you guys, it requires a lot of education. And that education does not always necessarily have to come through an institution. Like, a lot of times it comes through self-education. I don't really know, like, I don't want to take away from what Martin Luther King did. I don't want to take away from the love that he tried to share with one another and, you know, try to bring us together. But we have to be honest, and we have to sit here and recognize that there was a lot of detriment that took place following after that. And it really did set us back. And the continuation of like celebrating Martin Luther King to such a global and, you know, just mass thing, it overshadows the issues that are going on in our community. Because yeah, he may have had a dream for us to be all living in harmony, but we're still not living in harmony. Quite frankly, things are still perpetually the worst. They're still bad. And it takes away from the leaders, the black leaders who really fought for black people to have restoration in their own communities. You know, it takes away from the people who are still advocating and fighting for equality to this day. You see what I'm saying? There are black leaders who do not get recognition. There are black, like, you know, it's kind of one of those things to where it's like, I really feel like with Martin Luther King's dream, I don't want to say that his heart was evil or that, you know, I don't even want to go too far to say that per se. But what I will say is I just feel as though when it comes to Martin Luther King, everything that he was advocating for, you know, it just, I don't really think that it moved. I don't think it pushed us forward because, you know, Martin Luther King is the black face of the leadership. And there's so many other leaders. You know, when the Black Panther Party was risen, a lot of people felt as though it was like first of all, let me just say this, because let me gather my thoughts. When it comes to black allegiance, it's always seen as a threat. So Martin Luther King getting up here telling us to no longer be in a alliance with one another, but to integrate with white people was detrimental to our history. Yes, it was. And yes, it is still currently to this day. So I think when we sit and we try to globalize this man and we try to put him on this pedestal, and I'm not taking away from what he did. I'm not taking away from the love that he had, for his vision, for us to all live in harmony. I think that was a very beautiful vision, but I think that it really does have a way of eroding the fight that is still going on today. And it has a way of eroding and just like completely disregarding all of the other Black leaders who fought and are still currently fighting for equality and allegiance within our own communities. And it's unfortunate, it's really unfortunate. And that makes me wonder, like, okay, when it comes to Martin Luther King, like, was he really for the people? Like, we don't really know, you know what I mean? And I'm not going to take away from that because, again, I understand that education is just so vital. And there's just a lot of information. Like, I think, when you're in that space at that time and you're speaking like, hey, I want for us to all be together. Like, this is a very unique message, right? And like, I don't know. I just think even still with Martin Luther King being assassinated, like, it's just, a lot of people have said that was placed and staged and set up and all these different things. Like, I don't know. I just think, I don't want to misspeak and I'm not going to speak too much about this, but I just think that, like, overall, I'm not taking away from Martin Luther King's speech and his vision, but I just think that when we put him at the forefront of our community, it just takes away from everyone else. And this is why, you don't hear about such leaders. You don't hear about other Black leaders. You don't hear about other Black men. You don't hear about, the people who have, actually done work in our community to rebuild, to educate, to inspire, and to train and lead our youth. You don't hear about them. They don't get any recognition. You almost think they don't exist. And the Martin Luther King speech kind of has this, and like, when you even really sit and think about it, like, why do we glorify it so much? Because so many people don't even know what the speech was about. So many people, like, and people don't even live by it. And like, you're living in a world of delusion if you think that anything, like, things got a lot worse, quite frankly, after that happened. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I just don't think that Martin Luther King made such a significant difference in the community and in the world as much as we gave him influence. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that his whole thing had as much meaning in comparison to the meaning that we gave it, and in comparison to the meaning that we further give it. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, when we really sit and think about Martin Luther King's legacy, what was it? It was a speech that happened. He was murdered that day. And even still, this, again, it's the false sense of allegiance. Like, it was telling Black people, hey, don't build your communities. Let's come together. But what do white people do? They just, like, you know what I mean? So I just think I just don't think that was really, like, it didn't benefit us in any way. And even still to this day, celebrating Martin Luther King off the premise of him having a dream for us all living in harmony totally like takes away from the fact that we're still fighting for equality today. You see what I'm saying? Like, yes, was it courageous for him to give a speech during that time? Was it a beautiful thing? This man, literally sacrificed his entire life to, share love. But I just think that I can't say he should have did anything. My point is, there are Black leaders who are speaking love and truth and pouring into the Black community, and they've been doing it for years. They've dead and gone, long gone, and we don't know their names. Right? We don't know their names. That's the problem. Like, that's kind of like what I'm saying. So I'm not taking away from this, but I just think that, and then sometimes we do have to kind of look at it like, why is it that Martin Luther King was glorified and was able to get a federal day, when there are other Black leaders who didn't have that? You know why? Because they were standing for Black allegiance. They were standing for restoration for Black people, African Americans in their communities. They wasn't preaching about white people coming into our, they wasn't talking about that. So guess what? They don't get the recognition. They don't get a holiday. They don't get a statue. They literally just took down Henrietta Lacks. They just took down her statue. Cincinnati radiation study that happened with Black people, where UC, yes, University of Cincinnati, was out here unknowingly and willfully giving Black people and people of color, I think it was Hispanics, radiation treatments, testing things out for the military. Yeah. And they killed people died, people suffered, all these different things. And they only gave us a little tiny little plaque that's on the back of like a building. You know what I mean? And people had to fight for that because UC wouldn't even acknowledge it. So when you talk about Martin Luther King, like, just realize that, like, don't glorify. Like, it's nothing to glorify. We're still fighting the fight. And furthermore, everything that he preached, like, what good was it? You see what I'm saying? So I think we just have to realize when we have integration, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because the forces that be, the evil spirits that are within certain communities, like, it doesn't work in our favor. And anytime you come out and you're speaking Black love, I'm speaking Black empowerment, I'm seen as a threat. I'm not going to get a holiday. I don't get a holiday. I don't get a statue. You see what I'm saying? To me, that's a problem. I think that's a big problem, and we need to take a look at that. So when we talk about Martin Luther King Day, let's just be mindful. Let's recognize that it's still an ongoing fight. It's still an ongoing battle to this day. And, integration it's a falsehood. Look, again, I use the reference of Kim Kardashian because it's so much bigger than just like a little relationship. You know what I mean? It's so much bigger than that. This family has literally built their entire everything off of the influence and false allegiance with Black people and Black men specifically. You see what I'm saying? So I say that to say that they were able to market and profit off of our good service and talents, our influence, and we got nothing. You see what I'm saying? And that's just a very small example of the bigger picture, which is like what I'm saying, which is, we talk about cultural appropriation. We talk about how for years, white people have been taking our ideas. We don't have the patents. We don't have the resources. We don't have the, systemically, we can't get into certain spaces. And they've been profiting off of that, all in this sense of false allegiance, right? So they'll come into the community, they'll sit in the back of the classroom, they'll study certain things, and they'll take it, they'll go give it to Prada, they'll go, create a new dance and blow it up and make it this thing. It'll, the braids will become cool. Like, you see what I'm saying? So that's what integration did for Black people. It really robbed us of our ability to use our resources to better ourselves and our communities, right? Integration did not help us at all. It did not help us at all. Like, though white people were hateful in their demands for segregation, it allowed us to build one another up. It allowed us to use our resources in such a way that were, good for our community. You know what I mean? Like, it worked for us. We were cool with that. So this false sense of integration, I can only help but to question, and it may not be that Martin Luther King and himself was necessarily an evil man or a wrongful, intent like type of man. But it could be that maybe he was manipulated. It could be that maybe he, thought he saw something, but it's not real. And so it's a very unfortunate thing. It really is. I think that anytime, again, I think the biggest thing we have to recognize, and I think we talk about racism and all of those things, but the biggest thing is we have to realize that whenever we try to empower our communities, it's seen as a hate crime or a hate speech, or we're hating white people. That's the biggest chunk right there. And that's right there. That's the problem. It's only okay if white people are allowed to come to the party, right? You're only going to get a holiday if white people are invited. You see what I'm saying? That's a problem when our community has been deprived of so much, and we're not out here preaching hate to white people. We just trying to liberate and educate our people. We're not even, you see what I'm saying? But it's only acceptable. It's only approved. It's only okay if white people are invited to the party. So when we talk about MLK, just be mindful and just understand that there were other Black leaders who really were for Black allegiance and for building in our communities, and they sacrificed their lives to rebuild and sustain and to educate, and to people today. I actually seen this woman, I think she said she might have been a therapist, I'm not sure, but she basically talked about how, when she goes out and she talks to people about racism and she educates Black people in regards to like who they are and she empowers them, she gets a lot of hate. She talked about how she lost certain opportunities and things like that. So to me, that's a huge problem, right? That's a big thing. So, I'm not taking away from Martin Luther King. Like I said, I don't necessarily think this man was evil. I think maybe he may have been manipulated. He may have been used. I don't know. But I just think when we sit and we think about history and when we put this Black man at the forefront of our community, it takes away from everybody who has, who has done great things. We don't know their names. They don't get the recognition, and people who are still fighting to this day, So I'm still going to learn more about it and tap into it. But this is just kind of how I feel about Martin Luther King Day. And yeah, I just think that we just kind of have to be mindful of that. So I want to end this podcast by saying, I hope you guys are loving your mothers. I hope you guys are pouring into the women in your community. I hope you guys are pouring into the women in your lives. I say this all the time, but Black men have so much authority. Black men have so much influence, so much power, and just overall, just like influence. I can't stress that enough. In their communities. So I hope you guys are taking the time to uplift the women who make sure the train is still rolling, who make sure your name is mentioned in certain rooms, right? Coretta Scott, hello. I just want you guys to just be mindful of that, pour into the women in your lives, pour into your sisters, pour into your cousins, pour into, your nieces, your nephews, your mothers, your grandmothers, like give back to the women in your life who keep the ship rolling, making sure everything is stocked up. It's the things that go unnoticed so often with women. It's a lot of things that actually go unnoticed with women and Black women specifically. So we just have to be mindful of that, give to the women in your lives. So I want to end with that. I know this was a bit controversial, but I know y'all feel me because, it makes a lot of sense. And, it's not to say I don't think the answer is necessarily putting away MLK. I don't think the answer is like, oh, MLK is a fraud. Like, that's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, again, this false sense of allegiance, a lot of times it just does a lot of harm for us. It really does. And it's been happening for years. You know what I mean? Like, I remember I was in my anthropology course. And I remember we were talking about, it was a Black man, and they were talking about like how they traveled the world and, but the man didn't have a name, they didn't have a name. And I knew in that moment that it was the Black man, who was doing all the work, and the white man just kind of took the idea and like put, what I mean? And it's colonization. It's manipulation. I told you guys how I was reading this book. It's called The Native American Wisdom of Native Americans. And they talked about how white people came over and said, hey, let's work together, etc. Let me not say white people, I'll say Europeans. But, hey, let's work together. We can do these things. And they had these Native Americans signing contracts. And they was like, we were so confused. Like, what is this paper? The white man, only thing he knows is documentation. We don't know what he's talking about. And that's pretty much how they kind of manipulated a lot of things, So I just think we just have to be mindful of that. And again, education doesn't always come from an institution. Like, please, please, please. Like, if you take nothing else from this podcast, please know that education does, what, as a matter of fact, I just might go ahead and make an intro because I think it's time. I need you guys to know that education does not always come from the institutions, baby. You can go get your degree. You could do all those things, but your studies, Black man, your studies, Black girl, your studies are to be done at home. Your studies are to be done. You know what I mean? Like, understand that you go to college, it's a specialization. So with a specialization, that means that there is specific curriculum designed for the field in which you're studying, the field in which you're ready to go. There's a lot more that you don't know, and it's endless. You know what I mean? So please understand that. Like, please, please, please understand that. Like, I need y'all to hear me clearly when I say that. I know a lot of people may listen to me. You may look at me and you think, oh, I went to college. I'm like, no, I'm everything that I am because I'm self-educated. Everything that I am is because I read. I've been reading ever since I was a child. I love reading. You know what I mean? So that's why I am the way I am. That's why I speak the way that I speak. Like, it's all self-taught. College, I learned a few skills. It's a skill thing. It's like getting a trade. I know a lot of times it's fancy, like, because it's like, oh, it's a university. You got all these thousands of students. It's this whole thing, but like, it's a skill. It's no different than a welder. Like, it's a skill. But enlightenment, especially in regards to Black people, a lot of times that's going to come outside of the classroom. A lot of times that's going to come outside of the institution. So I need you guys to please, please, please educate yourselves. Please educate yourselves, Black man, Black boy. And the moment that you do, you're going to find yourself so empowered because you're going to find yourself with such a sense of pride. I tell you guys this, like, Black people were so much more than slaves. We were so much more than slaves. You're going to find yourself so empowered. You're going to find yourself so filled with God, so filled with love, light, and everything that keep our people afloat in these oppressing times in America. Okay, so love y'all. Hope you guys have a great day.